Tonight on The Big Story.
Ang bumagsak ngayon na ulan, alas 12 hanggang alauna sa Science Garden. Sa isang oras po ay 76 mm ang ating naitala. Kung ikumpara po natin yung Ondoy sa 6 hours, ang average po nun ay 75 mm.
In Metro Manila, when it rains, it floods and traffic goes on a standstill. Habagat showers inundate many parts of the capital on a Monday, start of the work and school week for many. Several areas in Luzon were also not spared from flood waters, and according to Pag-asa, the monsoon rains are not letting up this week. Rain or shine, there's the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte. A former special disbursement officer of the OVP testified about bags of cash and an order from Duterte to hand millions in confidential funds to the head of her security group. Speaking of the vice president, is she really asking for an audience with a president she has criticized and even supposedly threatened? Malacanang is addressing the issue. Good evening, I'm Ces Orenia Drilon. More than 200 millimeters in 5 hours. That's how much rainfall habagat or the southwest monsoon sent over Metro Manila today. If average per hour, this amount of rain was almost the same as what Ondoy dumped in the NCR 17 years ago. The chaos and calamity on the road this Monday is the big story. From mobile journalist Daniel Dayaw.
Traffic in Metro Manila at a standstill on Monday, August 17, as incessant rains trigger flooding. From major thoroughfares to residential areas, many spaces were not spared. In Quezon City, Commonwealth Avenue resembled a river, while in parts of Katipunan Avenue and even Elliptical Road, floodwaters reached up to knee-high. Some buses had to cancel trips along North EDSA due to inundated roads. Along E. Rodriguez Avenue, some commuters and motorists could only look on as the inundation reached up to chest-high. Straight ahead to Barangay Tatalon, some residents had to be rescued, with floodwaters rising to a normal person's height. Such was also the situation in Barangays Mariblo and Del Monte, where residents use boats as transportation. Over in Manila, España turned into a water world once more as motorists struggled to cross the flooded road. The sight was not better at Avenida, Taft Avenue, and around Manila City Hall. But it's still a workday for many. And they had to endure the rains, the flood, and the traffic.
Mahirap po. Wala pong masakyan. Kasi po baha na po sa mga daan. Nag-aantay pa rin po ng bus.
Wala pong natanggap. Gawa ng sa may Makati po banda doon sa may Chinoros, baha po eh. Galing po ako sa may poblasyon. Bali, isang oras po ako nag-antay doon. Tapos, ngayon lang po nakapunta dito.
Trains were open, but the lines were long and every passenger bus is packed. In Makati, jeepneys and motorcycles broke down as floodwaters rose beyond the gutter along Hilpuyat Avenue.
Taas na masyado ng tubig. Di na kaya nga nandito na ako sa gutter eh.
Traffic was also literally at a standstill along Buendia after floodwaters rose during the morning rush hour. By Monday afternoon, there were more showers, with Pag-asa declaring a red rainfall advisory over the national capital region. Some commuters had to walk to get to their destinations, but the roads and sidewalks were not safe, as John found out. He slipped while crossing a flooded street.
Galing po ko sa traffic apure kanina. Di ko akalain pagbalik ko, ganyan ang kalalim yung tubig.
In times of calamity, there's the ingenious, offering rides on the Kolong-Kolong for a fee of 20 to 30 pesos per person, and the generous 4x4s giving stranded commuters a free ride. According to the MMDA, there were just too many flooded areas on Monday. Drainages choked with the amount of rainfall. The agency's general manager likened the showers to those dumped by Tropical Storm Ondoy back in 2009, at least on an hourly average.
Kung titingnan po natin, ang bumagsak ngayon na ulan, alas 12 hanggang alauna sa Science Garden, sa isang oras po ay 76 mm ang ating naitala. Kung ikumpara po natin yung Ondoy sa 6 hours, ang average po nun ay 75 mm, 455. mm in 6 hours.
Marikina, which was the most affected by Ondoy 17 years ago, recorded gutter-deep floodwaters in Provident Village. By Monday afternoon, water level in Marikina River was on second alarm, which meant voluntary entry in the city's 23 evacuation centers. But authorities are hoping the rains will let up and the floodwaters will subside as fast as they rose. Kapatid Mobile journalist Daniel Dayaw, we are One News.
Provinces in Luzon also endured intense habagat rains and flooding. In Dinalupihan, Bataan, floods in some roads went up to the knee and finally to chest deep. Instead of cars, some residents rode their carabaos to navigate inundated roads. Farms were also washed out. In Aguilar, Pangasinan, waist-deep floodwaters affected households and schools. In Lubao, Pampanga, there was gutter-deep flooding almost everywhere. Motorists had been advised to plan their travels and take alternate routes. In San Isidro, Tarlac, part of the dike gave way after intense rains. Residents are calling on local officials to immediately address the issue. The agriculture sector is taking a beating as well from the continuous habagat rains and past tropical cyclones. With us tonight is Agriculture Secretary Francisco Kiko Chu Laurel Jr. Welcome back to the big story, Secretary Kiko.
Good evening, Sess. Nice to be back with you.
Well, today was really a bad day, and 1 billion already has been reported as damage to agriculture. Has this risen?
That yung 1 billion was a figure early this morning at like 9 a.m. So ay talagang tingin namin tataas pa yan at 25,000 hectares na affected with 25,000 farmers. So hanggang Wednesday pa tayo rito or even up to Thursday. So yeah, we expect na lumaki yung damage.
And the most hard hit are rice farmers.
Well, fisher folk din if you calculate na hindi sila makapagpalao dahil malakas. So may tama din para mga fish pond owners. Of course, rice, corn, cassava, medyo high value crops, malaking tama rin actually.
Ano pong tulong ang maibibigay natin sa mga magsasaka at mangingisda?
Well, yung sa mga isda, meron na tayong fuel subsidy naka-standby, then meron tayong tupad na pwedeng ipamahagi sa kanila. Yung sa mga farmers naman natin, of course, may seed supply na ready na, fertilizers, among others, pati sa high-value crops and corn. But of course, everything has to subside so that we can replant. Meron din tayong pinaplan na presidential assistance to farmers and fisher folks na napondohan. Just yesterday, a considerable sum naman. But of course, we have to evaluate pa sino yung mga tinamaan. Yun ang mabibigyan natin.
Alam nyo, the weather is really getting more extreme. We can't do as usual, hindi ba po? Ano po ba ang plano? Because of the El Nino, the habagat rains are getting stronger. Tapos sa Mindanao naman, they're seeing record levels of the heat index. So ano po ang plano ninyo dito?
Well, in general, where we see that November, pinakamalaking tama ng El Nino in terms of init. That will be mostly Luzon and Western Visayas, lalo na Mindoro and some parts of Mindanao. Yun talaga, babawasan namin yung intervention ng konti. Then kung saan naman may ulan, kasi El Nino naman doesn't mean it's just dry. Other areas will be wet talaga. Doon naman magdo-double down ng interventions para susubukan bawiin yung what was lost sa mga dry areas. But itong torrential rains na na-experience natin, meron din itong positive side. Yung mga dams natin, in-evaluate namin kaninang umaga, kasi sa office kami lahat kanina, and pumasok na tayo sa low levels. We were below low levels na yung apat na major dams natin. Ngayon nasa low na tayo. At kung tumuloy-tuloy yan hanggang Wednesday or Thursday, wag naman salang sobrang rami, but baka it might be enough para pangtawid natin sa next harvest season, which is the positive side of this rain.
Okay, but We know, hindi ba ang mga rice farmers malapit na sanang mag-harvest?
Yes, yun ang major issue. There are areas na flooded talaga, but luckily, it's still contained at initial estimate namin at 25,000. If you may recall, we have millions of hectares na planted naman. So in the scale of things, hindi pa masyadong maraming tinamaan, except do sa mga tinamaan kagaya sa Candaba, may tinamaan na sila. Yung other areas na medyo mas mababa, yun, we will have to really give them more support, no? Like yung nabanggit, so maybe some cash and fertilizers and other inputs, no? And loans and yung tinatawag na insurance, crop insurance.
Yun na nga yung crop insurance, I understand there's a pending measure na taasan ang pondo dito para meron namang proteksyon ang mga magsasaka.
Yes, from last year, 2025 to 2026, nagtaas na ng almost 1 billion yung crop insurance fund. For 2026 to 2027, itataas pa namin yun. Ang dating coverage natin per hectare for rice, assuming, was 20,000 pesos. At this point, nasa 25,000 na tayo. And hopefully, maitaas pa yung coverage na yan by next year to hopefully 30,000, which is considerable na yun, assuming total loss.
Now, Secretary, there were very disturbing photos, and this is not the first time this happened, na yung mga farmers sa Tublay, Benguet, iniwan na lang yung kanilang mga produce because walang bumibili. Kumbaga,
Yes.
tapon na yun. Wala po bang magagawa dito? Why do we have to see this time and time again?
Yung nangyari recently, that is actually ang main reason dyan is na, force majeure ng konti yan dahil it's the rains eh. The rains dampened the market, no? Even yung itlog, bumagal, yung mga ibang products bumagal. Even yung 20 peso rice namin sa palengke bumagal because karamihan ng pupunta sa palengke, hindi masyadong pupunta like sa lakas ng ulan eh. So that dampened market demand and tuloy-tuloy lang naman harvest nila. Plus yung sa mga Benguet ay marami din na wash out na road sa Atok, sa iba't ibang parte pa. So that is partly this problem. Ang long-term solution dyan ay pinondohan na namin for 2027, which we will be building a big cold storage na in Benguet, no, sa tabi ng Baptisi doon, plus vegetable processing center. So that should be the long-term, medium to long-term solution.
Kailan po yun magagawa?
We hopefully if ma-aprubahan yung net namin, yung mas malaking facility will be started next year. But this year pa lang, i-rehab na namin yung existing cold storages ng facility na yun na hindi na sa DA yun eh. But because of the last problem, aayusin namin. We'll be putting smaller units initially. Yung bigger facility will be next year.
How about transporting these goods? While you have cold storage, paano naman po yung mga truck na medyo hindi naman po nakasakay sa jeep, na nalalanta na yung mga gulay?
Yung tracking system actually is in place dun sa mga from Benguet to or Vizcaya to the markets and from other areas, Caraga to the markets. In place naman yung system eh. Unang problem this year is yung tumaas yung malaki yung fuel, then yun, naapektuhan yung freight cost, no? Ngayon naman, problema natin sa ulan, yung hindi makababa din masyado dahil yung market, mas matubal yung market ngayon due to the rains. Then marami din talagang kalye for like farm to market routes na totally destroyed dun sa area na yun eh. So that's another problem that we are facing. But the trucks itself, kompleto naman yung truck eh. We just have to put a storage in the meantime na may mga issues sa fuel man o kaya sa calamities.
Is there a better way, Secretary? Because we know August, I mean, it's a rainy season, to better plan, o baka dapat di na muna sila magtanim o gawing kimchi. I mean, these are the comments on social media, or pickle them. I don't know, instead of just abandoning them and letting these vegetables rot.
Yes, that is the main, as I mentioned a while ago, the idea of pickle sila o kaya gawing kimchi that is yung gagawin natin processing plant. Yun ang purpose nun. Or even to freeze them, ano. Ang plano namin dyan, maglalagay kami ng 2,000 ton capacity na cold storage. Hopefully by end of next year, early 2028, tapos na yun. So that should solve the problem for, at least there's a buffer area na or to stock para hindi tayo,
Right.
oo. So,
Ba't ngayon lang naisip yon, Secretary?
ngayon lang namin na, well, yung sa this year, tatayo na natin yung huli. We saw that coming in 2025. But once you see kasi the problem, it takes us a year para ma-budget yan, ano? And then, alam niyo naman, dadaan pa sa Congress, sa Senate, and everything. Because if it's not in the existing budget, then you have to wait a year, actually. So, yun. But finally, of course, nakita na lahat yan. Plus, in the future, the major food hubs, which itinatayo na as we speak, ngayon sa Clark, sa Manolo Fortich, Bukidnon, that will serve as the market link, no? So, makukompleto rin naman natin yung systems. It's, as I said, always say, walang short-term solution sa mga problema ng agri. It's all medium to long-term.
So, ang makikinabang yung susunod na administrasyon na.
Well, hopefully, maaabutan pa naman namin yung sa last year namin, aabutan pa rin namin yung benefits nito at lalo ng ating mga mamayan. If kung titignan nyo, I'm barely 3 years into my office, ma'am.
Uy, 3 years is a long time, sir.
Not in ma'am, not in
Not in agriculture.
not
When
in
you're
agriculture.
changing, the old system. But let's go to the consumer side naman, Secretary. What can consumers expect na mga presyo ng mga bilihin kagaya ng bigas, gulay, pork, chicken?
Kanina, nung nireview din namin, yung notable note na i-increase, and we have predicted this because of the rains in the last 2 weeks na, at tataas talaga ang high-value crops. As you said nga kanina, di ba, ang raming may ginatapon, pero ngayon tumaas sa palengke kasi there's a break in the chain. Paano makarating yung produkto sa market, because of the rains and all of that. Sa bigas naman, we took a notable note na compared to 2 weeks ago and this week, ang average price ng well-milled rice is 2 pesos lower. So okay, yan. Baboy din, medyo mababa. Manok, medyo mababa din. So in general, ang issue ngayon is isda. Medyo tumaas ang isda. Galunggong nagmahal dahil nga hindi makalaot ang mga fisher folk. Tsaka yung bangus naman, tsaka tilapia, medyo stable lang. But of course, hindi rin, dahil malakas din, hindi rin makaharvest. But high value, tumaas talaga. But the rest, itlog, okay pa naman.
Dito po sa 2027 budget, ano po ang priority ng agri?
Well, basically lahat priority, but there's a notable note on the fisheries side, that we will be building 3 mega hatcheries for the first time in Philippine history, no? One in Luzon, one in Visayas, and one in Mindanao to address yung mga kulangan natin sa fries and fingerlings, no, sa bansa. So that should make us more secure. Then we will be more focusing on aquaculture, no? We plan to raise samaral, yung ulang, no, yung freshwater prawn, crayfish, among others, no, para may additional varieties tayo. Dun naman of course, yung food hub, pag matapos next year yun, we need multi-year budgeting yan, so tuloy-tuloy yun. So magandang resulta rin yung magiging effect nung food hub natin should be on the consumer side and the farmer side. Hopefully, mas mataas ang kita nila dito, tapos sa consumer, mas bumaba dahil may congregation na at mabawasan yung mga traders or trading systems. Tuloy-tuloy naman yung pagpatayo natin ng cold storage, and of course, the critical is we're trying to achieve yung zero importation of onions by 2028, and hopefully no importation of carrots din by 2028 with the strategic locations of
Wow,
storage.
really?
Yeah, yun yung mga habol natin.
Nahahabol pa rin po ba ang mga smugglers ng mga yan?
Yeah, well, yes. Meron kaming, hindi lang namin siguro, mahina lang ako sa public, but like a month ago, marami kaming nahuli na mga misdeclared na isda, no, which meron kami mga sinunog last weekend. Yung iba naman return to sender at or finailan na ng mga penalties ano, yung mga airing. Sa sigarilyo naman tuloy-tuloy. Ang huli nakikita niyo naman nandun naman yung customs na humuhuli pero kasama naman kami rin doon. Sa baboy sa ngayon medyo wala naman kami masyado napapansin recently. High value crops, few months ago meron din kami nahuli ng mga carrots. At onions, siguro nakita rin yun sa news. So tuloy-tuloy naman at tuloy-tuloy nagmamatsak. I would believe na bumababa to dahil nga namamanage naman namin. If you can see the prices of onions sa merkado, sa 100, 120. So at yung mga ibang presyo naman, pati carrots medyo mababa. So
We don't see
usually
the
naman,
ridiculous prices like before.
wala na yun. Para so kung wala yung mga ridiculous prices then that also shows na bumababa din yung smuggling kasi smugglers are creatures of opportunity di ba?
Ngayon po, on the export side naman, ano ang mga agricultural products na apektado ng US tariff policy?
Sa ngayon wala naman na main products natin because of most of our main products na anuhan ng 19% tariffs are hindi yan yung major natin eh. So may exemptions kasi. So most of our products are actually exempted.
Now, you know, the president made mention, special mention nung enoki mushrooms sa kanyang SONA. Ano po ba yun? Saan yan, what is the prospect of export of this product and mushrooms and other, I suppose, not quite well known?
Well, sa ngayon yung mushrooms na enoki mushrooms, we're actually importing it. I think we import about 4,000 tons a year. No?
Really?
So yun lang. So
I
yun
know,
lang.
gawa nung hot pot at saka sa mga samgyup ba yun? Saan ba yun?
Yes, samgyup, hot pot, mga Japanese restaurant natin yung binabalutan lang ng bacon, asparo, parang ganon, di ba? So, yun lang, import substitution is one. Then after that, of course, there's markets in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, China. Yan yung mga target areas natin. And yun. Of course, other mushrooms like oyster mushrooms and others, maganda rin yun. So, where the DA is heavily promoting that. Kasi pwede rin palakihin sa backyard lang eh. So that can be another industry for the backyard.
At pag bagyo, hindi siya apektado.
Hindi apektado. And very nutritious, of course, with protein and all of that. Yeah.
What about essential oils? I understand that the president is about to inaugurate a distillation plant in Kamsur.
Yeah, it is a vetiver plant na meron sa Kamsur that basically from the vetiver plant that you extract some oils that can be used for
From the
perfumes from the roots. So that's also very promising. Of course, we all wish na mag-succeed ito kasi ang rami natin produktong pwedeng export among the usual mango, pineapple, bananas natin. Ngayon, of course, yung thrust natin sa ube rin. We're very excited in that we bigay ng Pangulo ng 300 million pesos. And just to inform you, ang US also nagbigay din ng grant for ube to our country. I forgot lang the exact amount pero hindi maliit, malaki. So that's exciting.
Sikat na sikat ang ube, but are the farmers benefiting? There are many stories about how the farmer is not the one that benefits. Malamang na naman traders.
Well, sa ngayon, I think even the farmer, kahit na may trader in between, medyo malaki maganda yung presyo eh. So they're still benefiting. But ang problema ngayon kasi sa ube, it's not about the farmer or the trader benefiting. It's kulang ng planting material, So even the traders are buying it, binibili nila ng mahal eh. Basta meron yung farmer eh. So ngayon, yan ang main goal natin for 1 year. We will probably, the DA will not probably, but we will multiply yung ating planting material by 10 times in 1 year. So yun ang aming target sa ngayon. Then once we do that for 1 year, then we will have 10 times more supply na. Hopefully in concentrated areas. We're not going to do it all over the country, so we can protect the farmers from the traders and all of that. And lalagay natin yung mga production area
Like I
near the
suppose
processing
Bohol.
plants na.
Bohol,
Oo.
because Bohol
Bohol
is...
would be one.
Yeah.
Kilala na sila eh.
Oo. Secretary, baka naman meron ng ibang ASEAN nation na kumuha niyan at gawing kanila. I mean, we've seen
Meron
that
na,
happen. Like,
meron na ho. Kaya
naku,
nga,
patay. Paano po yan?
this is a race and we've nag-geographic tagging na tayo, geographic indication, nag-intellectual property na tayo among all, and we're keeping our varieties a secret na, no? We're not saying this brand or this brand or this brand. We're coding everything. So we have to keep it close to our heart. Parang hindi tayo
Yes.
makakan.
Oh, so it's happening already.
Yeah, there's one country hindi ko na mention, but of course we're aware of that.
How
and
do we
we're-
stop that?
Yun na nga, first of all, ipapatent natin yung sarili nating planting material. Meron na tayong naka-DNA na, naka-genome sequencing na siya. So, parang hindi na pwede i-claim ng iba. So, but we have to do it quietly and fast.
Like for instance, bangus, na-hijack yan ng Taiwan, di ba? Or,
Well, traditionally, meron din naman sila actually.
ganun ba?
Oo.
Okay.
Pero yung ube, medyo uniquely ours talaga yan eh. Like calamansi natin.
But food heritage advocates say, we're focusing so much on ube, pero ang dami nating mga unique. Kunyari, for instance, yung durian. Ang dami nating variety, gusto pa natin yung imported from our neighbors. Is that
Yes.
also something is that your alert?
Not mine.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Basically, yes. We're actually focusing on now, including ube, mga 15 products na, no? For export. And
Can
we're
you name
doing
some off the top of your
Well,
head?
dragon fruit, calamansi nga, durian, cacao, coffee, heirloom rice, pandagdag pa yung mga heirloom rice varieties natin. Ang heirloom rice natin from Ifugao, dati nag-export tayo ngayon, halos wala na. So we want to bring it back to its former glory. Yeah.
Okay.
Or more.
All right, so despite the bad weather, it's been exciting hearing about these possibilities from you, Secretary, and hopefully our farmers will get what's really due them. Farmers
Yes.
and fisher folk.
Yes, ma'am.
We thank-
Definitely.
We thank you so much for talking to us again. Next
Thank
time
you for
po,
your
pasyal
invitation
naman kayo
again.
sa studio.
Yes, ma'am. Sa susunod, sige.
Sige po, Agriculture
Thank you.
Secretary Kiko Chu Laurel. You're watching the big story on One News. When we return, we have the highlights of day 16 of the 7th week of the Duterte impeachment trial, where a so-called hostile witness is presented. The details in a bit.
Ito po tunayan na wala pong nangyayari sa mga flood control project ng mga politicians natin. I know naman na capable ang Philippines in mitigating this flood. Sana sa next na election, alam na natin kung saan pupunta yung vote natin.
Grabe, sobrang laking abaran ng ginagawa. Wala pang yung gobyerno, solusyon sa ganito.
Some very frustrated commuters there who braved traffic and flood this first day of the work week. Habagat rains rendered many roads inundated, resulting in chaos on the road earlier in the day. Now, in today's impeachment trial, the prosecution's so-called first hostile witness said it was Vice President Sara Duterte who ordered the handover of millions in confidential funds to her security officer. We have more from mobile journalist Merimon Reyes. Merimon, first off, balikan lang natin, sino ba si Gina Acosta and ganong kahalaga ang kanyang testimonya sa impeachment proceedings?
Tess, itong si Gina Acosta, ang Special Disbursing Officer ng Office of the Vice President. Pero former, kasi hanggang 2023 na lang siya, naging SDO ng OVP. Pero way back pa, nung mayor naman ng Davao City, itong si VP Sara Duterte, Special Disbursing Officer din siya. At bilang Special Disbursing Officer, siya yung responsable pagdating sa pag-e-encash at pagdi-disburse o yung pagbabahagi ng pera o yung pondong gagamitin for certain purposes. Pero dito, sa kasong ito, ang pinaka-tinatanong sa kanya ay patungkol doon sa confidential funds ng OVP, 125 million pesos noong fourth quarter ng 2022 at 375 million pesos naman noong unang quarter ng 2023. At nung mga unang linggo kasi para sa article of impeachment na to na alleging yung misuse of public funds or confidential funds, in-establish muna ng prosecution yung naging yung daloy ng pera from the National Treasury papunta na dito sa ahensya. Ngayon, ang isa sa tinututukan ng prosecution sa kanilang pagtatanong ay yung kung sino yung nagiging accountable pagdating dito at anong violation yung nakikita nila alinsunod doon sa Joint Circular 2015-01 na batayan ng COA sa kanilang compliance audit at sa kung ano ang tamang paggamit ng confidential funds. Ses.
Sinabi ni Acosta that it was the Vice President who ordered the release of the money that they withdrew from Land Bank to the OVP security officer. Di ba 125 million ba ito o yung buong $500 million ang napunta kay Colonel La Chica?
Parehong nangyari yan, Ses. Yung 125 million noong 2022, yung 375 noong 2023, kaya pumapatak ito ng kalahating bilyong piso. At ito yung sinabi ni Acosta, kinumpirma niya kanina, na utos ni VP Sara Duterte na ibigay dito sa security officer o commander-chief or chief commander ng Vice Presidential Security and Protection Group na si Colonel Raymond Dante La Chica, itong confidential funds. And ito yung sinabi ng COA last week na direct violation ito ng Joint Circular dahil tanging SDO lang ang maaaring gumawa noon, yung pag-encash, lalong-lalo yung pag-disburse at direct violation daw ito ng Joint Circular. Ang sinasabi naman ni Acosta ay si La Chica naman daw kasi ang may alam, ang expert daw sa field, lalong-lalo na pagdating sa pag-i-implement ng confidential programs or operations. At oras naman daw na ma-receive ni La Chica yung confidential funds, magsasabit naman daw ito ng utilization report na magsisilbing ebidensyang na-implement daw itong mga programa. Pero ang sinabi rin kanina, hindi rin daw tiyak yung ilang surveillance operations, lugar o kaya naman target o eksaktong halaga noong ginawa nila itong physical and financial plan na may inputs din mula kay La Chica kasi plano pa lang naman daw ito. Pero nung accomplishment report, doon na lumabas yung ilang aktibidad kabilang yung tree planting, yung financial assistance, pati yung medical assistance. Ses.
Acosta also revealed programs that were not in the plan but were included in the accomplishment report. Could you explain how this happened and anong paliwanag niya dito?
Test, bago kasi magkaroon nung pag-disburse, yung cash advances, there should be a physical financial plan or PFP from these agencies. And according to Acosta, inputs for the plan also came from La Chica. Pero according to the documents, walang pangalan ni La Chica, walang pirma ni La Chica. Ang pirma na meron dito is galing kay VP Sara Duterte. And did you in-explain ni Acosta, plano pa lang naman daw at wala naman daw sinasabi yung joint circular na dapat itemized yung activities na ilalagay nila doon sa plan. At dahil plano pa lang ito. Pero nilinaw niyo naman na pagdating naman daw sa accomplishment report, ito na raw yung actual at ito naman yung naging detalyado na nila na paglilista ng activities that would include yung financial assistance, yung medical assistance, yung tree planting. Pero pinoint out naman kanina ni Attorney Armando Virgil Ligutan from the prosecution, actually ang nakalagay sa joint circular dapat specified. Yan din yung sinabi ni State Auditor Sailin May del Campo, lalo-lalo na sa mga dokumentong pinapasa ng ahensya para suportahan yung kanilang paggastos ng confidential funds. Ses.
At some point, Mary Mon, Senator Erwin Tulfo stood up and he indicated his displeasure na parang, ewan ko kung parang nagmamaang-maangan ba itong witness na hindi naiintindihan ng mga tanong. How did the other senators react also? Were they feeling the same? Were they getting as impatient as Senator Tulfo?
Says at the beginning or during the beginning of the direct examination of Acosta as a hostile witness, she actually showed difficulty in speaking in Tagalog. Several times she asked for clarification on the question thrown by Attorney Ligutan. She's asking if he could expound on it. And even though Attorney Ligutan rephrases his questions, even presiding officer Senator Chis Escudero intervened and also tried to interpret or translate some of Acosta's answers in Bisaya. There also came a time wherein they tried looking for an official interpreter while the proceeding is ongoing. However, dito na kumulo yung dugo ni Senator Judge Erwin Tulfo, comparing Acosta's manner of testifying here at the impeachment court in comparison with how she testified at the House Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability, wherein she was comfortable understanding English, understanding Filipino, speaking and answering in Tagalog. Even if tinanong siya dati ni Congresswoman Jinky Luiso, lahat naman daw yun nasagot ni Acosta. Kaya ang sinasabi ni Senator Tulfo, tigilan na raw itong panloloko. And sa pagka-question naman ni Presiding Officer Chis, sumagot naman itong si Acosta ng Tagalog.
So, what do you make of that?
Well, ang nasabi kanina ni impeachment court spokesperson Attorney Reggie Tonggol, kung babalikan natin yung pre-trial conference, the prosecution panel actually requested to allow, for the impeachment court to allow the use of both the English and the Filipino language during the proceedings. This is to ensure that there would be no miscommunication, no misunderstanding, lalo-lalo kapag may mga technical na points o mga sagot na hindi masabi ng diretsohan in English compared sa ibang regular court na English ang lengguwahe. At yun naman yung pinaka-pinapractice sa ngayon, yung English and Filipino. Pero tulad nga nung kanina na kinakailangan ng interpreter kung di raw talaga makakasagot yung tetestigo, yun naman yung gagawin kung sakaling kinakailangan. Pero yun nga, ang sinasabi naman ni Senator Judge Erwin, dati naman nakakasagot naman daw nakakaintindi ng English, Tagalog, nakakasagot ng Tagalog itong si Acosta. So bakit hindi raw siya mag-Tagalog sa impeachment ngayong araw?
Okay, sige. Panghuli na lang. Ang balita ay hindi matutuloy ang impeachment trial bukas gawa ng sama ng panahon?
Correct, says. According to a memo recently circulated by the Office of Senate President Sherwin Gatchalian, canceled muna, suspended muna impeachment trial proceeding bukas, and that would include din yung plenary session supposedly scheduled in the afternoon. Employees and other offices of the Senate will be holding their work from home setup for tomorrow. And ito'y sinasabi ni SP Gatchalian na nakadepende rin daw talaga sa kung may declaration from the palace na nakabase sa advisory naman ng NDRMO. Nakadepende rin ito sa kanilang information na makukuha tungkol sa magiging panahon sa araw na iyon. Doon sila magdedeklara ng suspension. And eto na nga, kanselado muna bukas. Wala mo ang opisina ang Senado ng face-to-face. Kaya tayo mismo ang babantayan naman natin yung pagbabaha naman. Hindi flood control scandal, yung pagbabaha naman mismo sa lansangan. Says.
Okay, so sa Wednesday, hindi pa natin alam. We'll get the announcement probably late afternoon tomorrow?
Correct, says they're taking it day by day. Kasi kaya kanina, even though nangungulit tayo kay SP Sherwin, wala pa siyang binibigay na pinal na sagot. Puwera na lang nitong just a few minutes ago yung naging advisory na from his office. And as much as possible, ang sinasabi naman ni SP, nakikita nila okay pa naman daw ngayon itong impeachment trial calendar. Isang araw pa lang, ngayon 2 araw na ang suspendido, pero kaya pa naman daw. Pero as much as possible, they are finding ways para ma-expedite yung proceeding, and that may include adding additional days or adding more time to the impeachment trial proper. Kaya pinag-uusapan din daw ng senator judges yung possibility na ilipat o ibalik na sa hapon yung impeachment trial. Says.
All right. Thank you. That was mobile journalist Mary Monreyes reporting to us live from the Senate. And joining us now to unpack major developments in today's impeachment trial is the Associate Dean of the UP College of Law, Paulo Tamase. Welcome back to The Big Story, Attorney Tamase.
Good evening, Cess, and to everyone doing the program.
So, your assessment of the testimony of the first hostile witness presented by the prosecution today?
I think we can start with the substance of the testimony. The SDO today is quite important on the part of the prosecution. If you go to the COA auditor's testimonies the last 2 weeks, one critical point for the defense always is that hindi pa tapos yung investigation of the Commission on Audit. That means that, I mean, to be precise, that the investigation is done, but the report is pending appeal and pending review with the Commission on Audit proper. And therefore, it's been often a point on the side of the defense that the Vice President is being prejudged, even if there's no final COA decision disallowing those disbursements. But the SDO today confirms, independent of the COA report, some of the red flags that were already spotted by the auditors. One of those red flags, and the critical one, is the fact that the disbursement was passed on to somebody who was not authorized under the joint circular, which may suggest either a misdeed in the office of the Vice President or at least gross negligence on the part of the Vice President. And the second is that these en masse disbursements to a non-authorized officer were under the direction of the Vice President herself, na si VP Sara mismo yung nag-utos ng gano'n na disbursement. So independent of the COA report, and therefore the COA report only confirms what the SDO today, a hostile witness, testified under oath, which is that those disbursements were indeed made under the direction of the Vice President.
Attorney, does a special disbursement officer have to have knowledge about the usage of the confidential funds, or is this a person who just makes sure that the rewards for information, etc., are, properly disbursed?
To be precise, under the joint circular, the SDO has additional responsibilities, which, just based on how I understand other SDOs in other agencies for other funds work, are additional or are heightened responsibilities. So the joint circular really calls them as accountable officers, in addition to the head of agency. That means that when they sign something, when they sign a plan and request for the release of confidential funds, that's understood to have gone through the scrutiny of the SDO. So it's not just somebody who signs so that the paperwork can move, or who signs just so that the money can be released. There's some active participation envisioned in the rules, and really personal responsibility. So this came up in the questioning of Senator Escudero, I think, who asked, why are you releasing the funds further, to let's say to Colonel Achica, recipient ba siya, or is he just somebody who is to disburse it further? Kasi I think the suggestion in the rule, and I think from how the senators are reading it, it seems like they understand that there is some personal responsibility on the part of the SDO. But that said, it doesn't excuse the head of agency. The head of agency is actually the one who orders the disbursement. The SDO is one of the many internal checks that exist in the OVP. And therefore, it's possible for both of them to be responsible for any disbursements that are not done in accordance with the joint circular.
Well, last week, Senator Amy Marcos suggested that it stops with the SDO, the accountability.
I don't think that's accurate, an accurate reading of the joint circular. So for two things. One is, even though an SDO may be designated by the appointing or rather the head of agency, the rule itself only mentions the SDO for certain functions and reserves certain functions for the head of agency. So a critical example is the release of the funds itself. It's not the SDO who orders the release, in accordance with the agency's plans. It's the head of agency who does that.
Right.
And people who work in government might wonder a bit, parang bakit ganun ba talaga yung responsibility ng head of agency? Our experience is that normally, if pumasa na through various checks, yung release of funds, certain paperwork, signed vouchers, etc., hindi na siya pinapakialaman ng head of agency, and it can actually be released without the head of agency's knowledge. But confidential funds are special. They are designed to be really under the personal responsibility of the head of agency, because unlike normal, regular public funds or disbursements, these are not subject to super strict controls. They are there's a lot more flexibility given, and therefore a lot of more responsibility is passed on also to the head of agency.
Plus the auditing, the ICFAO is under the office of the chair of the COA, actually.
Highlighting the special character of these funds. For most funds, they are not under a special division, but in this case, because of both the sensitivity of the information, but also the type of evidence that would be needed to prove a proper disbursement, it goes all the way up to the COA.
Now, I'd like to ask you, is Madriaga vital to the prosecution's case? Well, right now there's a libel case, right, filed by the VP against this witness. Does the prosecution have to prove that the VP used the funds for personal use? Or is it enough that there was negligence or as contained in the circular, there is a presumption na that it went to personal use because of the failure to follow the procedures?
So 3 quick points. The first is legally, he doesn't need to be there. The ground in impeachment is betrayal of public trust, which means that if from the COA report, these SDO testimonies, it becomes clear that either there's gross negligence or perhaps that the funds really were lost, whether through complete lack of care, pabaya talaga dun sa funds, or if not something more sinister, that should be enough, right? From the legal point of view. But we also, second, need to acknowledge that this is a political exercise. And therefore, the typical question that comes up is usually, baka naman nawala lang yung pera, but as long as hindi siya naibulsa, right, ng vice president or someone close to her or someone under her direction, then there's no graft and corruption that's involved. And that is itself part of the Article 1 charge. So it's certainly more persuasive to bring Madriaga out because siya yung magtatali ng buong kwento. But a third quick point is that there is, of course, some pressure on Madriaga because I think today there was a perjury case filed against him in Taguig. Now, practically speaking, that might scare off a witness from testifying in unrelated proceeding like the impeachment. But the reverse is that if he wants to defend himself against the perjury, then he should double down dun sa testimony niya, right? And say it really in an impeachment setting na totoo yung statement niya na yun na hindi yun false. So quite a number of considerations there. Strategically for the prosecution, it certainly will help their case. But I think they're also concerned, or I'm not just trying to guess on the prosecution side, kung Madriaga will say or can be relied upon as a witness
Yun na nga eh.
if he's called. Because he has changed his version before.
Perjury pala, hindi libel. Right. But parang, I don't know, the signals from the prosecution, at least from their press conferences, parang they're having cold feet about presenting him. They're still deliberating.
So unless they may have another witness to present that would connect the dots, basically. So again, from the legal perspective, hindi siya required enough really to show mismanagement. But given, and this is the reality of the current impeachment case, if you compare this to the impeachments of ERAP and Chief Justice Corona, the amounts here are larger. They are more shocking than those amounts. But because of the larger scale graft in today's government, parang maliit nga yung, di ba, it's 125 million. Government employees can earn their whole life and will never be able to spend 125 million or earn 125 million that was just spent in 11 days. But compared to everything else, parang it does help. It becomes more compelling, more persuasive if there's a witness who can show that the money was not only lost, but that it went somewhere to somewhere that it wasn't intended to go by law.
Finally, because we're running out of time, Attorney, I have so many questions, sayang. But how would you assess the way the witness conducted herself? Was she feigning difficulty in understanding English or Filipino? Based on, we saw clips of her actually in the House seeming to understand questions propounded to her.
I will be trying to be generous to the witness, no, and that means that if she may be more comfortable answering in a language that is really her native language, possible naman na naiintindihan niya yung question, but how she would express it, no, how she wants it to be accurate, might give her some bias to speak as much as possible in her own language. But ito yung supposed to be the benefit with a hostile witness. In a hostile witness examination, the prosecution can ask leading questions from question 1 to question 300, right? And that means those questions can just be yes or no. So it could have been possible, I think, to conduct the examination in a way to just ask her yes or no questions. Of course, may gaps yan kahit pa paano, but the whole, eruption of Senator Tulfo may have been avoided. Now, in any case, it seems like the slowness of the morning examination was made up for by how fast the afternoon examination went. And I think if they keep track to this type of questioning, at least, then there would be enough time to meet naman the schedule of the impeachment court.
Or why not have an interpreter? After all, it's a language. It's a language in the Philippines.
That's also possible. And I think having tried to get an interpreter before, for a court hearing, there are certain advantages for both sides. But siguro, if you want to consider some of the downsides to it, one is it will really slow down the proceeding. The second is that it gives the witness a little extra time to answer. Kasi if the witness, for example, understood the original question but would wait for the translation and the witness can wait for the translation, then it gives the witness some time to think. And that doesn't mean that the witness will not tell the truth, but the answer will not be as spontaneous, definitely, as if it were a faster examination. So may ganun din siya na factor, which, probably, I think just to add to everything, the court didn't want to do that because you already saw how it would slow down the proceeding. And they're really trying, if you saw the first witness today, parang stipulation na lang, there's some effort on the part of the Senate to really speed this up.
Right. Tempers are getting short. I didn't realize we're on the 17th week.
Yes, it's 17th day, I think, of the impeachment trial. But
All right.
you can see it already. The Senate presiding officer is a lot more active in asking questions, in managing the proceeding, and it's a way for them to speed up the trial without compromising the due process considerations.
As always, we appreciate your insights. Thank you for your time, UP College of Law Associate Dean Paulo Tamase. Meantime, social media exploded with rumors over the weekend about Vice President Sara Duterte allegedly asking for a private meeting with President Bongbong Marcos. Even self-exiled Duterte ally Harry Roque caught the bug and posted a collage of screenshots showing talks of such a private meeting. But Malacanang was mum on the reports. Instead, Palace Press Officer Claire Castro had this to say.
Ang sabi ng Pangulo, sa una pa lang niyang podcast, kahit sino, sa lahat na maaaring hindi sumasang-ayon sa kanya, siya ay bukas upang makipag-usap para magkaroon ng magandang pagkakaintindihan. Hindi partikular para kay Vice Presidente. Baka kasi magkaroon na naman ng misinterpretation.
And Vice President Sara Duterte has again sued her self-proclaimed bagman Ramil Madriaga for perjury. Duterte personally filed the complaint before the Taguig City Prosecutor's Office earlier today, accompanied by her lawyer, Paulo Panelo. This is the VP's second perjury complaint against Madriaga, following the first one filed in March. Duterte has denied Madriaga's claims that he delivered cash on her behalf, including allegations that she accepted money from POGO operators and drug lords. She accused Madriaga of spreading false statements in an effort to undermine her 2028 presidential run. And now back to the weather. Pag-asa says the southwest monsoon or habagat will continue to affect Luzon this week.
So far po, ang assessment po ng Pag-asa ay full week po ulit until the weekends ay meron po tayong inaasang mga pag-ulan dulot ng habagat. While for the next 3 days po ay mga significant rainfall po yung na-expect natin over the western sections po of Luzon.
The inclement weather has also prompted Malacanang to suspend face-to-face classes in all levels tomorrow, August 18. Work in government offices in the National Capital Region and 14 other provinces are likewise suspended. Take a look at your screens now for the full list. Now, on a much lighter note, a test of skill and control as the Toyota Gazoo Racing Philippine Cup took on the Batangas Racing Circuit for its latest leg. The details from mobile journalist Ivan Tarinque.
The Toyota Gazoo Racing Philippine Cup hit a new track this season, and it wasn't an easy one. Race Weekend 3 brought the action to the Batangas Racing Circuit in Rosario, the country's oldest permanent racetrack. It was the series' first time at BRC, where the 3.7-kilometer circuit put driver skills and technique to the test.
Pag kumakarera ka talaga, pumupunta ka sa Batangas Racing Circuit to really test your techniques, your skills, your competency as a race car driver kasi mas complicated siya. It's a bit more complex.
The track certainly lived up to its reputation. Drivers in the Vios and Tamaraw 1-make race cars battled through BRC's tight corners and narrow lanes.
Dito sa BRC, talagang technical yung corners. So for me, mas mahirap sa BRC and iba rin yung klase ng road sa BRC, mas imperfect.
Those conditions left little room for error. Drivers had to be precise on their braking, find the right racing line, and know when to push because one mistake could cost valuable time. Meanwhile, off the track, fans got to experience the TGR action up close with interactive activities, car care experience, prizes, and racing memorabilia. With the third race weekend now in the books, the championship is heading into its final showdown. The TGR Philippine Cup returns to Clark International Speedway from September 10 to 12 for the season finale. And this time, there's even more at stake.
It's double the points, so double the action, double the intensity, and it's already the season finale. So, mas aligaga ang racers natin to really compete to get that trophy.
Now, it all comes down to one final weekend. Double the points, higher the stake, and one last shot at the trophy. Kapatil Mobile Journey Ivan Tarinque, we are One News.
Race Weekend 3 has also produced both new and familiar faces on the podium. In the Tamaraw Sprint Race 9, Raymond Cudala took the top spot, followed by Inigo Anton and Oliver Aquino. Alain Gabriel Alzona won the Super Sporting Sprint Race 9, with Michael Brian Poe and Red Diwa rounding out the podium. And in Sporting Sprint, Bern Zaragoza won Race 9, while Joshua David Marquez took Race 8. Now it's all eyes on the final race and the championship decider. And we circle back to our top story. Our big picture tonight is in Xavierville, Quezon City, where a jet ski was seen cutting through the floodwaters earlier today. This as heavy rains brought by the southwest monsoon or habagat submerged roads and homes in Metro Manila and other parts of Luzon. Those are the big stories this Monday, August 17. I'm Ces Oreña Drilon, kapatid. We are One News, your side all the time. Good night, keep safe, and stay dry, everyone.